American economist Milton Ezrati pointed out that the Chinese Communist Party is eager to expand its power and wants to use every lever of power as soon as possible. However, this approach is actually damaging the economy and causing many businesses to prepare to leave China. He emphasized that the decoupling that the U.S. government has been talking about has clearly begun, and is primarily due to market reasons, rather than any coercion from the U.S. or any other Western government. In an article published in Forbes on Monday, April 3, Ezrati stated that the Chinese leadership has shown a teenage impatience in recent years, which is contrary to Chinese culture and quite un-Chinese behavior. This has shaken the economic foundation that supports the CCP. Ezrati stated that when China began its economic rise in the late 1970s, the main attraction was the ability to provide well-educated cheap labor for Western and Japanese companies. Even when China joined the World Trade Organization, WTO, for the first time in 2000, its average annual wages were only slightly higher than 3% of the equivalent level in the United States, the article noted. This advantage brought a large amount of Western and Japanese investment to China. However, as the economy developed, wages in China have risen, and the rate of wage increase has been much faster than in other developed countries. By 2021, the last year for which complete data is available, average wages in China had nearly reached one-third of the equivalent level in the United States. The article states, "At this point, the increasingly hardline policies of the CCP have weakened its economic attractiveness. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Beijing blocked exports of critical supplies such as surgical masks, causing Western and Japanese companies to reassess the reliability of sourcing from China. The CCP's strict zero-COVID policy has only compounded these concerns." According to Ezrati, as cheap labor and reliability have been lost, Western and Japanese companies' dissatisfaction with CCP policies has continued to accumulate. For instance, Beijing requires any company doing business in China to share technology and trade secrets with Chinese partners or engage in outright intellectual property theft. However, despite the international community's dissatisfaction, the CCP government has shown no sign of changing these practices. Ezrati also pointed out that Beijing is increasingly resorting to other bullying and retaliatory actions. Despite legitimate sovereignty claims by Japan and the Philippines, Beijing has ignored the findings of international tribunals and maintained a naval presence in the South China Sea and East China Sea. In addition, the CCP often threatens to use force against Taiwan and uses formal and informal means to retaliate against South Korea's business interests simply because the South Korean government installed the THAAD, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, missile defense system. The CCP authorities also cut off Australia's wine sales to punish the country for questioning the origin of the COVID-19 pandemic. And because of trade with Taiwan, similar retaliatory actions have been taken against all manufacturing industries in Sweden's Ericsson, South Korea's Lada, and Lithuania. Ezra Vogel also pointed out that as the United States, Europe, and Japan begin to react to China's bullying and retaliatory behavior, businesses are beginning to worry about getting caught in diplomatic disputes. Recent surveys by foreign chambers of commerce have shown a significant change in business attitudes. Tony Danker, Director General of the Confederation of British Industry, CBI, said that every company he has spoken to is rethinking their supply chains. "Every company I speak to is rethinking their supply chains," he said, "because they anticipate that our politicians will inevitably accelerate towards a world decoupled from China." Bettina Shane-Behansen, chair of the Shanghai chapter of the China-EU Business Association, pointed out that the only predictable thing about China is its unpredictability, which is harmful to the business environment. Bettina Shane-Behansen, chair of the Shanghai chapter of the China-EU Business Association, pointed out that the only predictable thing about China is its unpredictability, which is harmful to the business environment. According to a report by multinational insurance brokerage firm Willis Towers Watson, as many as 95% of multinational companies are concerned about the risks of doing business in China, up from 62% just 2 years ago. Ezra Vogel pointed out that a long list of well-known companies have already started or are seriously considering taking action. Apple has scheduled the production of AirPods Pro 2 in Vietnam. Samsung is preparing to move its production capacity out of China. Volvo has refused to build a new factory in China and will build it in Slovakia instead. Adidas and other shoe and clothing manufacturers have already begun to move their production capacity to Vietnam and other places. Japanese companies have begun to bring some of their production back to their home country from China. China has joined the World Trade Organization for more than 20 years and has become the world's factory. On December 11, 2001, China officially joined the World Trade Organization, WTO. This was one of the most important geopolitical events in the world after the Cold War. As early as the same year when China and the United States established formal diplomatic relations in 1979, the two countries signed the U.S.-China Trade Relations Agreement in Beijing, giving each other the most favored nation treatment since February 1980. However, the United States granting China the most favored nation treatment required the president to propose it annually and then be reviewed by Congress for extension. Despite the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989, in May 1994, then U.S. President Clinton still announced the continuation of granting China the most favored nation treatment and decoupling trade from human rights. In addition, Clinton signed the permanent normal trade relations with China in October 2000 during his second term, ending the annual review of the communist regime and helping China's accession to the WTO. The next year, on December 11, 2001, after China officially joined the World Trade Organization, WTO, its share of the world economy climbed from 4% in 2001 to 18.5% in 2021, making it the world's factory. According to official Chinese data, China's GDP surpassed that of the UK in 2006, Germany in 2007, and Japan in 2010, becoming the world's second largest economy. However, the Chinese Communist regime did not adhere to its commitments when it joined the WTO. In 2015, the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, ITIF, of the United States released a report titled False Promises: The Huge Gap Between China's WTO Commitments and Practices. The report found, through a detailed comparison, that China had not fully complied with its commitments and membership requirements in areas such as restricting market access, restricting technology or intellectual property transfer, and providing subsidies to Chinese enterprises and export industries. When China joined the WTO, it also promised to gradually remove market access restrictions, open up to foreign investment, and allow wholly owned subsidiaries, joint ventures, or joint stock companies. However, in some sectors where foreign investment was permitted, foreign companies were forced to transfer technology according to China's regulations. Additionally, China has been accused of intellectual property theft, including selling counterfeit goods and pirated software, as well as stealing trade secrets from companies. There are loopholes in WTO rules that allow member countries to self-identify their status. There have been different views on whether China is a developed or developing country for a long time, but all parties believe that there are loopholes in the rules of the WTO in this regard. The World Trade Organization does not have a clear definition of developed countries and developing countries, but allows each member to make declarations based on its own economic development. Within the framework of the WTO, the most important difference between the two is that developing countries enjoy special and differential treatment. These special treatments mainly include relaxing the restrictions on trade subsidies for developing countries, allowing developing countries to flexibly use economic and commercial policy tools, extending transition periods for developing countries, and providing technical assistance to developing country members. In the WTO decision-making process, which uses a one-member, one-vote consensus-based mechanism, developing countries often act in concert. Due to the higher proportion of developing countries in the organization, they are more likely to gain decision-making advantages. In December 2017, the then U.S. Trade Representative, Robert Lighthizer, made clear at a WTO ministerial meeting that the definition of development under the WTO framework should be clarified. Lighthizer stated that the United States could not sustain a situation where new rules only applied to a few countries while others escaped the rules by self-declaring as developing countries. 5 out of the 6 wealthiest countries in the world claim to be developing countries, which is problematic. He said, if it appears to the vast majority of the membership that acting in accordance with existing WTO rules makes it more difficult to achieve economic growth, then obviously there needs to be a serious rethink.